We are live, dog.
Okay.
And we're back with the midweek faith lift after Sunday, the burning bowl ceremony.
That was good.
You all the way.
Yeah,
What were you saying? Let's go all the way.
Yeah, that was Chris Berman.
Yeah.
And he was an NFL announcer.
Right.
And every now and then when somebody would break away, he would say
Yeah,
that.
I
He'd get all
remember that.
excited.
I remember that.
So I thought I'd just toss that in, lighten it up a little bit.
And it definitely lightened it up. That was a great service.
Well, sometimes that service can get a little heavy, and so I wanted to purposely put a little humor into it here and there, just so that people felt a little more relaxed.
Right.
This is not God looking at you.
Right.
This is where do we want to go? That sort of thing. And one thing that I want to talk about, and I want to talk to our viewers about, when we go through that service, it's a 3-part process that we talked about.
Right,
okay, there's an ending, and then there's the kind of the middle, the vacuum where you get inspiration, and then there's a commitment or a covenant, that goes along with it. And it sounds like there is a lot to it. Okay,
It definitely does.
and there is, but it can also be instantaneous once you know how to do it. Okay,
Because it kind of felt as if it was just a lot to do at one time. To
yeah.
me, I mean, we've done this before many years. I mean,
Yes, we have.
This is how it goes, but it
Right.
just felt a bit like it was a lot going on at one time. And I was wondering if that's something that can happen over the course of a few weeks or a few months. I mean, is that a natural process, like for some people to kind of do it?
Well, I'll give you an example, and I've been familiar with burning bowl services and the process, the change process of ending, middle, and end for many years. Having been in Unity churches for quite a while. But it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. And I'll give you an example. I was working in a company at one point in time, and you're always trying to do your best, those sorts of things. But at some point in time, and I don't care whether you're in a relationship, whether you're in a job, whether you're in a certain part of the country, at some point in time, you say, I want to do something different.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, it's a mental, emotional process, and it can be almost instantaneous. And really, what I did in that particular time with the job that I was in, I made a very clear mental feeling decision. I don't want to do this anymore.
I don't want to do this anymore, right?
Okay. Done. Over. All right.
What do you want to do?
So the next question is, all right, where do you want to go? And that's being proactive. All right. So once you say no to this, you follow that up immediately with what is the vision? Where do you want to go? Now, I was in.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You metaphysically, you talked about how the Exodus story is an example of how there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I mean, an ending, a middle, and a
That's correct.
Right. And so that took 40 years.
Well,
And did it take 40 years because they didn't have this? Because they didn't have this plan down to a science the way you're describing it? Because the way you're describing it, it's like, okay, if you do one, if you have this vision already set up, it can go a little faster than if you don't have a vision. If you just kind of let these things go and you just leave a vacuum.
Well, there's two things involved. Okay. First of all, 40 years is Bible language.
Right.
Okay, which means as long as it takes.
Right.
So it could take 80 years.
Right.
Okay. If you take a look at the Hebrew people at that time, they were given the 10 Commandments as a new vision. And if you can imagine, what do you mean we can't kill? I don't get it. To us today,
it's like right. Of course you can't.
Those
kill.
are ground
Right,
rules.
right.
Okay, well, we don't even think about some of those things, and yet to them it was something completely new. I mean, who in their right minds builds a golden calf to worship?
Right.
To today, that's not something we would do. But to those people, all right, so those people at that time were nowheres near, and as educated metaphysically as we are today. They did not understand the laws of thought and how to. Moses did, all right, but the people in general didn't.
Okay.
So does it take 40 years? No. Does it take as long as it takes? Yes. But as long as it takes can be almost instantaneous.
And that's really up to us.
And that's up to us.
Okay.
And so the way that I did this, I said, okay, I don't want to work in this job anymore. Now, by the way, I was working 70 hours a week, literally, 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, plus a little bit more. And I was making, I don't remember, $7,000 or $8,000 a year, almost,
Wow.
subsistence. Now, this was back in the early 70s.
That still wasn't a lot of money.
But it still wasn't a lot of money, Yeah. And so what I said was to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. But I'm going to continue to do the best I can because I'm getting paid for it. That's my job. But I created a better vision for myself. And what I wanted, I was very, very clear. I want to go to a company where I can make at least $15,000 a year. I want to, and you have to understand a little bit about what I was doing. I had walked into a woodworking plant that had about 50 people. This is where I started. And, I had a degree and that sort of thing. And I started working out on a saw and some of the other. Well, 3 weeks later, I was the foreman, and 3 months later, I was running the place.
Wow.
I reported to a general manager who was sales, okay, but in terms of being a plant manager for 50 people. And what I realized during that time is that there was a lot about running a manufacturing plant and running and people that I didn't know because I'd never worked in a factory before. So my thought was, again, after I'd been there for about 3 years, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go to a place that's very well organized, where I can go in and I can see how all the departments are run. How do you run purchasing? How do you run finance? What's HR all about? How do you schedule stuff? That sort of thing. And I want to get an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. I want to pick that up also as a credential. Those are the things that I want to do. And I was very clear about it. Now, today, some of the things that we talk about are making a vision board, affirmations.
Writing a letter to God.
Writing a letter to God, doing the covenant. I didn't know about the covenant at that point, but what I did know is that there was a spiritual aspect to this. And so I basically, at that time, did some prayer work and invited God into my life and said, okay, help me with this. I'm willing to do. And very, very shortly after that, I got an opportunity in Chicago with a Fortune 500 company that was in the steel manufacturing basis. And I hired on as one of two management trainees. They only hired two, and this was the first time they ever did it. And it was a great company. It was very, very well run. Hired in as a management trainee, and as part of that, I would go around to all these various departments.
And you
learned how to do it. And they had multiple plants. They had an MBA program if you wanted to go back and get your a master's degree or whatever it was. They would fund that. Now, it wasn't a free funding. In other words, if you turned in A's, you'd get 100%. A's or B's, you get 100%. C was 50%. Like a D, I forgot exactly what it was. But the long and the short of it is that I made a very clear decision. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to continue to do my part, but that's not what I want. This is what I want. I was very clear about what I wanted, and I did prayer work, and it was very, very quick.
Now, is that something that we should do on a regular basis, or is that a one-time, one-stop kind of situation? We did it on Sunday.
Right.
We wrote the letter. We did the burning bowl ceremony, the whole ceremony. Is that it, or is this something that we need to continue to do regularly until we begin to see what we want to, what we we wanted to create, what we want to create?
Well, I think we're dynamic beings, and dynamic means changing. You know, for example, Penny and I have lived in this house for 15 years now, 17 years, something like that. And there's always projects that I want to do.
Right.
You know, and so I think within our lives, in terms of relationships and jobs, how we show up in the world, what we want to do for vacations, there's always that process about going forward. You don't want to look back. Okay, what you want to do is you want to look forward, and that process is all about that. Now, one of the things that I often talk about is gratitude and appreciation. Gratitude and appreciation are two of the highest mental and emotional energies that you can have. And we talked about cleaning the pipeline, all right? As long as you have a lot of gratitude and appreciation with the visions of what you want to do, and you have a regular prayer practice, and things don't always go exactly the way you want it. You know, there's always little things here and there. But if you keep up your prayer practice, if you keep up the gratitude and appreciation, and keep the visions alive of what you want in your life. And I mean, with relationships, it could be a dog, you know, or another
person,
or another person, or a parakeet for Pete's
sake. So is that where the daily affirmations come from?
Exactly.
In your daily prayer work,
right?
In your daily prayer work, doing those affirmations,
affirming
the vision that you want for yourself.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, think of the Lord's Prayer. You know, the Lord's Prayer, by the way, a lot of people use that as a rote prayer. They say that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take a look at the Bible, what Jesus says is pray like this. And there's a format to it. If you look at it closely, it starts out with combining with God, asking for what you want, and then giving thanks. And so I would encourage everyone to have a daily prayer practice where you do exactly that, and then take a little bit of time to listen, you know, to sit back and just simply say, okay, you know, thank you, God, for being with me right now, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to create. Again, we are creator beings, made in the image and likeness. Right. And so, I mean, God's pleasure is to see us grow and develop and create things that not only work for us in our lives, but work for everybody else. You know, so that's the idea behind it. So the burning bowl is a great example of taking a good long look at what does an ending look like? What does it feel like? You know, and we got the Exodus story. Well, what does that in between time, you know, look like? What does that feel like? Is that where we get our greater vision? And I was talking to you a while back, and I remember a joke one of my minister friends said, you know, when one door closes, another one opens, but it's hell in the hallways, you know. And so that's that middle part. And then when you have a regular spiritual practice of just giving thanks, being appreciative of what you've got, and
that helps while you're in the hallway.
Oh yeah, and when you're in that hallway, you're always visualizing and talking about what you want, what you want to create. Now, the other thing about that is that oftentimes that thing that you're looking for won't exactly show up as poof, here it is. Let's say that you want a degree in college, okay? You want your 4-year degree in whatever. It's not going to come in the mail for you with you know, God's hearts on its side. Right. Well, here you are. You got to do your work.
You got to do your work,
And so the idea is
those avenues are going to appear to some extent, but you have to be able to recognize it and be able to go.
You're
in that
exactly
direction.
right. You got to do your own work behind it, and at the same time, when that opportunity presents itself, and it's an opportunity, you know, it's not all of a sudden there it is. It's an opportunity. What I can tell you, when I changed jobs at that time, the work that I was doing is I would get the Wall Street Journal, you know, and back in those days, once a week, and I forgot when it was, whether it was on a Monday or a Friday. I think it was on a Friday or maybe a Saturday. They would have all these ads in them, you know, different types of ads. And for several weeks, I would get the paper. I'd cut out the ads. I had several stock letters that I would just, kind of fill in the blanks, send the letters out. And I must have sent out, I don't know, maybe 100 resumes,
Right.
something like that. Now, the rule of thumb with resumes, if you send out 10 resumes and get 2 responses, that's huge.
Right.
That's 20%. And most people, you're in the 10 to 12% range. And then if you get an interview on top of that,
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of job interviews. It's
and so in other words, you put out so many resumes or letters or contacts. Of that, a small percentage you're going to get something back. Of what you get back, you're going to get a smaller percentage of interviews. Right. Of the interviews,
offers.
Okay, so you have to do your work.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate, back in those days, and I did fairly well. And I've switched jobs several different times, but I knew the process. I knew what I wanted. I knew, what I wanted to create in my life, and I also knew that there was work involved with it. And then, when those opportunities showed up, I was ready to walk through the door. And that is the process. It doesn't have to take 40 years. It does have to take as long as it takes, which can be a few hours, a few, it can almost be instantaneous.
Well, Doug, I want to thank you for giving us an explanation of what it's like,
Okay.
to some extent, in the hallway.
Yeah, that's right.
And explaining that whole process to us. Before we leave, we have next week Sunday, this week Sunday actually coming up. We're going to have a guest speaker online.
Okay.
And I think his name, I'm going to put him up here. I think that's January 16th, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have Richard
Mirage.
And he'll be presenting "Willing to be Willing," which is exciting. It's an exciting topic there.
Yeah.
You know anything about
Richard Mirage? Yeah, I do. He wasn't in my class, but he was in a class just before, just after. And, Unity of Phoenix is a very large Unity church. And he had several opportunities. He's an excellent speaker. And he's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I would encourage people. I haven't heard his talk yet, but I would certainly encourage people. Well worthwhile.
Yeah. So we're going to have him this Sunday at 11 o'clock online, Unity of Chattanooga Facebook page. And Doug, again, I want to thank you for coming out.
Okay.
And we'll see you guys on Sunday, and then we'll see you again next week for our midweek faith lift. Thank you for coming out.
All right, great. See you later.